Look at that. Pretty spank, eh?
It was pretty dramatic, wasn't it? Let's get ready for the drama.
There you go. Mark Carney officially sworn in there, showing off his pen that he used to sign the thing. Again, he should get that big Sharp if he wants to do those Donald Trump kind of lookalike things.
Well, it makes a change, though, doesn't it? Because this time the thing that he signed actually was a
real.
consequence. It actually mattered, yeah.
It was actually a real thing. So, yeah, I think they're talking about making that pen. I didn't put the clip in because they're talking about making that pen into a ring or something that, and he asked if they could do it for him. But he did also send out his priorities to his caucus there. His 7 priorities. Did you have a look at those yet?
I did, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely nothing new or interesting at all, really, but it's just it's basically just a formalized rehash of his campaign points.
Yeah. Did you want to go through them real quick? Or, I mean, they are basically what they were talking about in the campaign for sure, right?
Yeah. Well, number 1, establishing a new economic and security relationship with the United States. And then a dig at America by saying strengthening our collaboration with reliable trading partners. Then there's the thing about getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers. And very, very vague comments about potential energy developments that are expediting nation-building projects. Just, the kind of language that you hear in the HR meeting. Bringing down costs for Canadians and helping them to get ahead. That doesn't mean anything.
No.
Making housing more affordable by unleashing the power of public-private cooperation. Catalyzing a modern housing industry and creating new careers in the skilled trade. Again,
don't forget
that's waffle.
Don't forget that big word, catalyzing. Catalyzing a modern housing.
Yeah, good for them. Protecting Canadian sovereignty and keeping Canadians safe by strengthening the armed forces. Okay. Well, again, that's very vague. We don't have any information whatsoever on how that's going to happen, but go on then. Go on, lads. Attracting the best talent in the world to help build our economy. That's kind of we never really mentioned much about that. That's a new thing. And then returning overall immigration rates to sustainable levels. What does that mean? Sustainable levels. This is imprecise language used so that you can fail and then say, no, but I never said anything. I said sustainable. And I'm telling you that sustainable is this. Therefore, I haven't failed. So shut up.
Yeah, and then Jolie did say that she was going to attract the best and brightest from the United States by offering them half the pay or a third of the pay and double the taxation.
And much worse weather. And then the last one here, spending less on government operations so that Canadians can invest more. I mean, build the strongest economy in the G7. This is all waffle. Nothing here can be measured. There's no like build 500,000 houses or make it so that there's nothing concrete. There are no promises here. The only promise, if anything, that can actually be measured is build the strongest economy in the G7. Okay, which will almost certainly fail. But he says build the strongest economy. So that doesn't necessarily mean the fastest growing, certainly doesn't mean the largest. It just means strongest. So he can say, oh no, we actually do have the strongest economy in the G7. Have you seen the percentage of women in employment? Have you seen how many treaties we've signed with First Nations? That's what we call strong, because we just make things up as we go along. Ha ha. I mean, it's just a lot of, honestly, I almost feel like I've shamed myself by even reading that out. It's a complete waste of time. It's just total guff, waste of paper.
We do have a clip of the Prime Minister talking about making things clear. I'll just leave it at that and then and see if you're clear after he's done talking about making it clear.
We had, for almost half a century, we as Canada, a relationship with the Americans, which were a steady process of deepening integration. Deepening integration in economics. We went from free trade deal through to CUSMA, deepening integration in military aspects. And that process of deepening integration is over. We are in a position now where we cooperate when necessary, but not necessarily cooperate. So we have other options for that cooperation. We are pursuing those other options. You will see a very different set of partnerships, security and economic, going forward. But to be absolutely clear, when it is in Canada's interest, first best interest, to cooperate with the Americans, to strike deals with the Americans, relationships, and particularly in examples like ballistic missile defense, that may be the best option, and if so, we will pursue that.
So there you go. That question is regarding the Golden Dome, because like Mark Carney said, our relationship with the United States was over, and now there's a lot of backpedaling on that. To be clear, I would like to be clear that I wasn't clear. I don't know.
What do you think this means? This is new, isn't it?
What's that?
Doing this gesture.
Yeah, I've seen that. Coming together.
I would say about Mark Carney, he's obviously an intelligent man. There's no point having that conversation. I think it's true that he's an intelligent man, but he doesn't half know how to sound stupid. He sounds like an idiot when he speaks like that, but I don't know if he realizes how dumb he sounds when he just waffles around with these undergraduate level words, like 3 or 4 syllable words. Don't you realize how stupid you sound? Just speak clear English. Prove you're obviously intelligent. Show it. Be intelligent. That's what I would tell him in their rehearsals anyway.
I think what he's trying to do, though, is kind of portray to the people that he said that the relationship with America is over, and now he's kind of backpedaling on it and kind of hiding it under a little smoke and a bunch of like language that doesn't make much sense.
Absolutely, that is what he's doing. But there are ways to do that and still sound like you're not, in double-digit IQ land. There are ways to do that, and that's not it. To just waffle on in that sort of hopeless, like he's speaking in a way, he's bored of himself, That's no way to speak. If you're going to say something, it can't be boring to you, What are other people supposed to make of it if you're bored by it? But also just not even taking people slightly seriously, not taking people seriously enough to even expect them to want clarity or expect clarity. Just come out with absolute waffle. It's just, it demeans the office of Prime Minister, I think. And I would hope that his advisors in the background are going to sort of say, come on, Sparky, stop doing that. It's not cool.
The more honest approach would be, look, I won the election with the fear of Trump while I was having discussions with him saying that I was going to do that. Now that that's over, we need to continue with our integration with the United States, and especially we have to rely on them for protection. They won't be rolling tanks in Canada. They never were going to roll tanks in Canada. And that's just the way it is. I won. So there you go.
Yeah, so eat it. Now I'm the Prime Minister. I mean, the thing is, that comment that he made, which is just such sophistry, it's such a clownish remark to make, which is something like, we'll cooperate with them when it's necessary, but we won't necessarily always cooperate with them, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Just word salad. Word salad.
Well, just meaningless, really. But if you want to talk about necessity, I mean, there's a reason that being the Prime Minister of Canada is basically like your job is basically as chief negotiator with the United States. That's basically your life and your job. And then now and then you've got to bat aside some mad Quebecois demands and things like that. There's a reason that that's the case, because Canada, necessity is a word you can use if you want, but I think it's even beyond that. There is no Canada without the US, it's everything. You have to do, it's the ultimate necessity. You have to do so much business with the US. So I think the fact that he won this election on this complete lie that we were going to separate from the US and go off and be our own dudes, I mean, he's just got himself in trouble now, hasn't he? And it completely jars with reality. And so now he's sat there like a naughty undergraduate that hasn't submitted an essay on time, and he's trying to explain why. It's just it's farcical, I think.
From Blacklocks, friends of ours, 53% of Canadian mortgage holders concerned about defaulting, says a new CMHC report. More mortgage consumers are using one type of credit to pay off another. You got to love that. Kiting, using credit cards and that. That is not a good place for many Canadians to be right now.
Well, the federal government is in that position, so why not the population? We might as well borrow to pay interest. That's what the Canadian government's doing.
Yeah, and it's a majority though. 53% said they're concerned about defaulting on the mortgage, and a lot of them, it's the mortgages that were kind of taken out in 2020 and stuff like that were just when property values were high. And a lot of these mortgages are noir. We're going to look at that next year. And it's not a good situation right now. We can take a look at this next slide. Yeah, there. So 86% of Canadians who bought a home in the last 5 years now underwater. So that's like when mortgage rates were. So when property values were really high, and Tiff Macklin said, "Go out and buy that home. Don't worry, Canada will not be raising rates into the foreseeable future." And lo and behold, 19-fold increase, unprecedented increase. And then the property values have started to drop, and people can't afford the mortgages. A lot of them coming up for renewal as well. So, and renters are in the same boat. Renters, who represent about 41% of Canadians, also struggling to keep up with their financial commitments.
And we're told by some very special individuals that we're in a very, very strong economy, and we should be more grateful, and that we should, worship at the altar of the status quo, which has benefited so many people for so long.
And you know who's waiting there to backstop that, to pick up the homes at default? Companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, and Brookfield. These corporations are buying up single-family homes like crazy. So,
well, maybe the Unifor president can ask for those to be expropriated.
Seize them.
Bob's your uncle. Yeah, we'll have them.
You put this poll in there. It's a Canadian press story. Most Canadians feel attached to the country, though only half trust the government. Well, that's.
To be honest, the biggest surprise there is that it's half. I can't believe there's that many.
Which half is that?
Yeah. It's remarkable. It also quite interesting. It finds that Alberta had the lowest. People in Alberta, Albertans had the lowest connection to Canada, 70%.
And no
surprise there.
And no surprise on the young people either.
Well, the thing is, we have a social contract, don't we? Whether that's, formal or informal. It's much more informal, isn't it, than anything else? But it does exist. And it hasn't really, all these people, young people, they signed the contract, metaphorically speaking, and held up their end of the bargain, but they haven't been given what they were promised, have they? And that's basically the crux of Pierre Poilievre's campaign to be prime minister, isn't it? It's like, Canada's broken. The deal is broken. You deserve a house and a well-paying job and all the rest of it. And certainly that we're going to talk about it a bit later, aren't we, with the students? But that seems to have really resonated with young people. And this poll here just adds.
Yeah,
adds to that, really, doesn't it? That the young people and old people, they've diverged on priorities, and it's mostly to do with economics.
You can put that one up there, the young people poll there. And then, like you said, that is a lot of just it seems like a broken promise to our youth.
Yeah, look at that. The difference is very, very interesting. And when you look through on this exit poll from Abacus, it's older people ranked to the Trump and US issue a lot higher than the younger people, something that we already sort of knew, really, and data has been showing that for a while now. But that is interesting, isn't it? Young people, because these are like grade 4 to 12, I think they said.
Yeah.
So not your usual conservative supporters, really. At least not in the traditional analysis of Canadian political parties. But that just goes to show how how profound the change has been. Where the Liberal Party is like the pensioners' party, it's the seniors' party, isn't it? It's the party of the status quo, and the Conservative Party is the insurgent party that's trying to like change things. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and we talked about this already, and you know where Mark Carney kind of stumbled around in his dramatic change of heart regarding cooperation with the U.S. For Donald Trump revealed those plans for the Golden Dome missile defense system, and you know, had to backpedal a little bit on that one.
So we can't trust them. Sorry, in the words of Mark Carney, they want to break us so they can own us. However, let's have a conversation with them about paying about 20% or so of a $170 billion US missile defense system. That sounds like a good idea. And, you know, in the NORAD system anyway, and the Northcom and all these things, the Americans have complete control over that anyway. They decide. I mean, I only learned quite recently when I read a book by Annie Jacobsen, which I would recommend to everybody, about nuclear war. I only learned recently that the Americans actually have control of the trigger completely. We don't even have a voice in the room when it comes to whether or not they shoot down missiles that come into NORAD territory. How crackers is that? And then Carney's like, yep, let's talk about more of that, even though you want to break us so you can own us.
Let's be fair, though, because if they had to consult with Canadians, we'd want to set up a committee while this missile was incoming. They'd have to set up a committee and then talk to all
Can you
the...
imagine Melanie Jolie on the phone, like,
and then you have to talk to all the...
shoot down the missile.
All the stakeholders, and then decide whether it's in the best interest, and depending on where that missile's landing, maybe some of those people deserve it.
Well, yeah, and the missile, you have to wonder if the missile is flying over the Northwest Territories, so that's Inuit territory. Obviously, you've got to ask the Inuit for permission to shoot down that missile first. And then before you get a response from them, it'll probably have moved down into Ojibwe territory or something. Then you have to ask them, obviously, can we shoot down this missile, please? It's very tricky.
And then some people probably deserve it, like Alberta, they'd probably say, well, we don't need to do that one. I'm making a joke. Anyway, the NDP, BC seen as the final frontier as the federal NDP as leadership question looms. And this is our friend that I've interviewed a couple times, former NDP candidate, Cade Desjardins.
I reckon that they've interviewed him because they've seen our stories. They must have done, because he was our guy. But they've probably looked around for NDP candidates or former MPs or whatever that have actually said vote for the Liberals, and they've found him at the top of the list on our humble little website.
We did that interview where he came out in support of Stephen Fear, the Liberal candidate, and said that the don't vote, he suggested, do not vote for the NDP. And then, you know, he took some shots in that interview as well on Jagmeet Singh, but, you know, in this story he did as well. He just said that you can't really be seen as a symbol for the working class when you're walking around the airport with a Versace bag or a Gucci bag, whatever the case may be. There you go. That's what...
I think, right, okay, that's one thing you can say. I get that. I get those criticisms of Singh, and it is a bit unwise, isn't it? But they're talking about reconnecting to the working class. If you want to reconnect to the working class, it's not actually that complicated. The best way to do it is advocate policies that the working class want.
Yeah.
The working class have never wanted the NDP's ridiculous hobby horse policies, like being extremely sort of like vehemently, aggressively anti-Israel and going around and adopting all of these like culturally left-wing, progressive, whatever you want to call it, policies. The working class don't care about that. That's why they voted for the Conservative Party, you know? So if you want to get back in the game and you think the working class is the answer, you know, it's beyond ditching the Versace bag. You know, you have to ditch the middle class Versace policies, if you will. You have to get rid of that.
I think that one of the things that Poilievre accomplished, and maybe to his detriment, was basically the you know, like the strong voice of getting rid of the far left in politics, and even the Liberals had to move more to the center. And that was to the detriment because most of those voters went to the Liberals.
Yeah. Well, together, I guess, they just rendered, the Liberals and Conservatives together rendered the NDP almost pointless, didn't they? And based on how Jagmeet Singh had arranged that party, what it stood for, he basically rendered them,
and
defunct.
so many unions came out in support of Pierre Poilievre, which is typically where the strength of the NDP was. But like they left that a long time ago and went for very, very woke policies that most people, like they were at the 10%. You know what I mean? Like they're supporting the 10% of what people wanted. If that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a failure. It's a
might be
failure
high.
of strategy, isn't it?
That number might be high. The Fraser Institute put out a thing. Doubling Canadian natural gas production exporting to Asia could reduce global emissions by 630 million tons, nearly as much as Canada produces in a year. We've been saying that forever. But Justin Trudeau...
89% apparently. 89% of Canada's emissions could be kind of offset, let's call it offset, by exporting LNG to Asia and by doing so displacing coal. I mean, we've heard that for a long time, haven't we? Danielle Smith says that quite a lot, but nobody listens to her when she talks about that kind of thing.
The Trudeau Liberals definitely never listened, and Stephen Guilbeault definitely never listened. Chrystia Freeland never listened to that. And all they said was it was Canada's responsibility to stop and stop producing oil and gas, and also that there's no business case for LNG.
But there's no, I mean, I don't want to get too agitated here, but there's no business case either for massive subsidies for wind turbines and solar panels. There is no business case for that at all. It's done because, in the words of the people that support it, it will help save the planet. But so would this.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, if anything, this would do it quicker and
more
to a greater degree,
more effectively too. The Western premiers finished talks on trade. Not much that I didn't get a lot of information out of this, but and talking about Arctic security in Yellowknife. Well, the Golden Dome would be the biggest piece of that security, I guess, but that's a ways off. Space Force and all that stuff. But again, obviously Premier Smith wants those pipelines, and Scott Moe wants to form a united front to press Carney on strengthening the criminal code. And all that David Eby wants to do is virtue signaling and give Danielle Smith some gears on Western separation.
Well, and Scott Moe, I guess, implied, because Saskatchewan tends to come top of these polls, doesn't it, when it comes to separatism. But I would just say another thing that Eby's tried to mention is how great the Western Canadian economy is, which I just found a little bit amusing, really, that the idea that BC is in that party. It's not really, is it? BC's economy is much more like Ontario's, like just a mess. It's almost like neutral, not really here or there. It's Alberta and Saskatchewan that have the good, like very decent demographics by Western standards, like more young people, and it's those two provinces as well that bring in vast amounts of foreign currency through their exports.
Well, here's a glimmer of hope, the first one I've seen in a while for British Columbia, though, and it's CN, obviously with the port there and transporting goods across Canada, to invest $615 million in British Columbia and build capacity and power sustainable growth. There you go. They spent lots of money last year. In 2024, they spent about $554 million in British Columbia on track maintenance and key infrastructure initiatives, but they're looking to spend another $615 million. I mean, rail is such an important thing for this second largest landmass nation in the world. Rail is obviously how we move a lot of stuff, and trucks. If you've ever driven between Vancouver and Calgary, you'll notice that much of that traffic is semis that burn diesel fuel.
Which is just, when you actually really think about that is ridiculous, isn't it? It's so silly that we do that over the Rocky Mountains. It's just absurd, really. When we could we could double down on trains. It does seem a little bit silly, doesn't it?
We
Very
should
dangerous.
have a massive rail system, even bigger than we do have, and that's a decent investment, I guess. That's a lot cheaper than what Trudeau and them had pitched for the rail between Quebec City and Toronto. Only $650.
I'm sure Chrystia Freeland is chomping at the bit for her big announcement, her big speech, because that's obviously going to be her baby, isn't it? It's going to be how she's going to get in the news all the time and get all the attention that she needs. So when she comes out and announces it, I bet you that the price tag will blow your head off, because it's always safe to double or treble the price, the cost that they initially put forward anyway. So it'll probably already be gigantic. Like, God knows what. I don't even want to predict.
We're going to see if we can get an interview with somebody from CN. They do employ about just under 2,700 employees here in British Columbia, and they operate about just under 2,800 miles of rail. It's odd that they put it in miles instead of kilometers. They've seen now they're a Canadian company. You must have missed that metric thing, right? There you go. And then I'm just going to move this next one down. We have it later here. Skip that next slide, but we're going to play this the feds. This is a Fox news story where this huge Amazon crime syndicate. I'm going to play this clip. This is in our yeah. Go ahead, play this clip.
This is the police with a warrant. Come to the front door.
Fox News exclusively capturing this early morning bust of an Iranian-born man living in an upscale Los Angeles area neighborhood, luxury SUVs out front.
Police, hands up! Hands up!
The suspect walks out of his home shoeless, surrendering on charges of interstate theft.
Stop, stop, stop! Hands on your head.
Allegedly part of a scheme that stole $83 million in Amazon goods.
This particular individual is here on a visa. He's engaged in a tremendous amount of illegal activity.
There you go. Porch Pirates, $83 million with Amazon stuff.
Mad. And Iranians as well. They're getting a bad rap lately. They're in Europe as well. Almost every time there's like an arrest of some kind of, organized crime or whatever, it tends to be Iranian these days. I don't know what is going on there. I don't know if they're associated with the regime or something like that.
And the fallout from Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, it could well be the biggest story of the century, especially in the political world, of what was really going on. We got a little clip here with Stephen A. Smith here. We're going to play this.
Hey, liberal media is dead. This is what he was talking about. The Mark Levins, the Sean Hannitys, the Clay Travises of the world and others, the Megyn Kellys of the world. What can we say to them at this particular moment in time? If you are a Democrat who bought in to the Democratic Party, willing to engage in cancel culture, when it came to anybody who would dare verbalize a dissenting opinion to what they were putting out there, what can we say? CNN was clearly guilty of it. We saw Joe Scarborough going on MSNBC with Morning Joe. We saw him on the national airwaves raving about President Biden's health and acuity. We saw it. But there was clearly evidence to the contrary. And when that evidence was revealed, people on the left engaged in condemnation towards those who had the guts to tell what clearly has now become the truth. You can get into the time.
There you go. Sean Hannity had a piece too that says you need to stop watching CNN, MSNBC, and says that we were telling you the truth the whole time and they were lying to you. There's a bunch of people coming on this, and Stephen A. Smith is a Democrat, and is typically, but obviously they got a lot of egg on their face, and we have a lot of that here in Canada too. When like the stuff you see with your eyes and your ears, and then they're told you that that's just cheap fakes and lies and all that stuff. This is going to be a tough one. This cover up, and then who was actually running the White House. This is a big story. Not our story, but a huge story. This is a massive story.
It is a very big story. And what a strange situation that it's taken like 5 years to get here, you know.
But, you know, like with
better late than
Watergate,
never, I suppose.
with Watergate, it was the press that actually broke that story. In this case, the press was part of that story.
Yeah, because the press, you know, it's quite a boring comment, but I'll make it anyway because I mean it's an obvious comment. But the press in the US and Canada and other countries in the West is fundamentally liberal left, and they defend liberal left parties. You know, it's not that much of a surprise, really, is it? So in Canada, the press,
That's a huge.
generally
cover.
speaking,
Yeah.
the press supports the Liberal Party of Canada, and in the US, they support the Democratic Party. So when the Democratic Party installed a clearly incompetent, incapable man as president, he had to be defended, didn't he? He had to be defended against Trump, basically, and that's how they justified it. It's quite. I mean, it is a bit distasteful, isn't it? But back in you know, during Watergate, I mean, that was obviously a Republican president that was targeted there, so it was easy for them to do it. It was natural for them to do it. It was Richard Nixon as well, like the hated Richard Nixon. But even then, back then in the 70s and earlier in the 60s during the Vietnam War, the press were a lot more you know, they were a lot more sensible, I think, and they were willing to criticize Democrats as well. But those days are gone now. I don't think we have the kind of societal trust anymore to expect that.
The Canadian media hands are not clean in this as well. They ran cover for it as well when there was challenged, and they, you know, and I've had arguments with some of the local reporters here, and saying if you dared say anything, question, you know, his acuity and stuff like that, you were accused of being a Trumpist and all, and they used that to basically shut people up, right? And said that you weren't allowed to ask, you weren't allowed to question it. And in even Canada, it's a little bit worse because Bill C-18 has basically compromised most media outlets, because now they're at the begging bowl with the government to get some scraps.
Yeah. And in Canada's a much more like hierarchical society as well, I think, where people are a lot more deferent, and people are kind of, you know, they're told to shut up by their betters, basically, their social betters. And often they're like, oh, yes, my lord. There's a lot of that in Canada where they kind of, you're looked upon as a kind of vulgar upstart. And that's exactly how they look at anybody really that questions the orthodoxy, and that includes like the truckers, for example, anybody that was against the response to COVID-19 and many other things. Really, you're just ostracized, and you're looked upon as some kind of like leper or something, aren't you? Like a social leper. But America's kind of too big and too democratic and too boisterous, let's say, for that to be possible.
And they have alternative voices in there, and that's what, if you watch that whole clip from Stephen A. Smith, they have alternative voices that people are trusting more. There is, you know, like Fox has the biggest listenership, and you talk about Fox in Canada, people right away, probably even some comments here, you know, how dare you listen to Fox News? Fox News has the biggest audience for cable down there. And then there's voices like Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, Stephen Smith, lots and lots of voices that have big voices down there that are even bigger than the media outlets now. And so you get that. We don't get a lot of that here in Canada. Like we have like two national media outlets, CBC and CTV, and Global struggling, very much struggling. And you know, you got some other ones that say they have a national focus, like a National Post, which would be more right-leaning, and the Globe and Mail, which is a subscription-based platform. So there's not a lot of choice other than us. You can come here and listen to Iain and I.
Yeah,
we get no money.
Not, eh?
We got no money from the government, so we don't need to toe their line. Even though some people will actually, you know, like, you know, say all kinds of really nasty things. I post lots on LinkedIn too, and I get called a lot of nasty things. So just for questioning what's going on, the economics of it, for sure, because it's all about the economy. Stupid. Everything comes down to the economy. Like, you know, the rest of this stuff is just nonsense. Let's listen to our finance minister, Francois Philippe Champagne here, explain what he's going to do with our money.
Bonjour tout le monde, c'est un grand plaisir de vous accueillir ici aujourd'hui pour première rencontre du G7. So good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be with all of you. Welcome to Canada for those who travel from afar. This is going to be our very first press conference, and I have the privilege and the honor to be with Sergei Marchenko, my dear colleague from Ukraine. We had the chance to meet earlier today, and I think it is very telling to the world that we have our Ukrainian friend with us for the G7 summit. You know, it sends a strong message to the world that we are, all of us, recommitting to support Ukraine. We're going to hold Russia to account. And we're also going to talk about what we're going to be doing in terms of reconstruction. You know, the discussion we had at the international level, there's a moral imperative for all of us to support our Ukrainian friend in reconstruction. They fought for democracy, not only for them, but for the world. And we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Ukrainian friend to make sure that we bring an end to this conflict, but at the same time that we look forward in reconstruction. So this morning I had the privilege with Sergei to meet a number of pension funds and a number of very important investors to look at what's going to come next. You may have seen the report from the IMF that the reconstruction effort in Ukraine is going to be north of $500 billion US over a decade in order to rebuild this country, build back better together. And today was a moment that we could share. There's a lot that we could do together. We talked about energy infrastructure. We talked about infrastructure like roads, ports, railway. We talked about defense technologies. We talked about energy. You know, Canada is an energy superpower. So what we can do with them with respect to hydro, to nuclear energy, also to oil and gas, and what we can bring together to this table. So it was a very interesting moment. We talked also how we could work together eventually to share best practices in building a pension system.
There you go. $500 billion.
I must say, it doesn't fill me with confidence. I don't think I just don't think he's that smart, really. Sorry, Champagne.
No. Let's just move on. This is a Globe and Mail reporter, Robin Urbach, says we needed a by-election in Terrebonne. I wonder where we're going to get that decision.
Yeah, that can't be allowed to continue. I suppose they're just trying to find out if, will people just stop speaking about it? And if so, we'll just pretend it never happened. But I don't think that's the case. The Bloc are just going to keep on. They're going to keep rabbiting on about it, aren't they? They're going to take it to court and all the rest. Much better just to do it now. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it. But, I mean, it seems like it's just going to drag on until they have no other choice.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. We're going to go on to the 6 Buzz TV one there, that clip there. California wants Canadians back, and they're offering 25% off hotels, attractions, activities. I was just down there in California. I stayed in the Palo Alto area, in the Silicon Valley area, actually, and it was great. Very welcoming. I felt good. Like there, you'll see some stories out there and say that how horrible it is down there, and that Canadians feel unsafe to go there. I felt great, and the border crossing was very easy, and everything was good. So there you go. You can get a deal down there. And if you're going down there, if you want a cheap place to eat, if you're in that Palo Alto or Silicon Valley area, you go to Google's visitor center, and they got $2 coffee and $9 salads. So there you go. Or
I thought you were going to mention In-N-Out, but you resisted it.
Sorry. In-N-Out burger, decently priced, and I ate there 6 of the 7 days I was there. So there you go.